Hi, welcome back to the Book Writers Club. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for joining me and welcome. Today I want to talk about creativity. 5 minutes, just talk about creativity. So, what is creativity? Creativity is new ideas that maybe someone has never thought of before. How do you come up with new ideas that no one has ever come up with before? Because everything in the world has been done before. Things get repeated over and over and over. Sometimes we take an idea and we just repeat it, like Disney. They do movies over, right? There's nothing new under the sun. So how do we become creative? Well, your life is creative. Some things that have happened to you are unique to you, and some things are not unique, but that's okay. So how do we make creativity something that we do? So what I like to think of creativity is it comes in a couple of different ways. And those ways, I have 5 ways to be creative. 5 ways to be creative with your book. The first one is an incubation period. I don't like to just jump into things and say, okay, I'm going to just make this and this is going to be creative. Sometimes you need an incubation period. That is a set of time, whether it's a couple of days, a couple of hours, a couple of months, or something to marinate in your brain and to become more unique than the original thought. So like with my first book, it was an original idea of poetry, but then after a while of incubation, I decided to add questions for reflection in the back of the book to add more depth and more interaction and involvement for the reader. And then I added scriptures because I wanted to add even more depth to the book. So sometimes incubation will allow you to think of new ideas and other ways to do something that were not in the original thought. That's the incubation period. Giving yourself time to manipulate the idea to become even more creative than the original idea. The next idea is concept blending. Concept blending is when you take two totally different ideas and you combine them. The idea I come to think of with concept blending is like the cartoon Transformers. They took robots and they took cars, put them together, and now you have they took robots and they took cars, and now you have Transformers. That's the whole concept based off of 2 totally different ideas, right? That's called concept blending. Taking 2 totally different ideas and making something new from it. This has happened with Apple. I think Apple created the iPod, they took music and phones and decided to create a musical device that we can play music on, and it's small like a phone, and then combine the phone into the music, and so now we have both, right? Or the camera and the phone together. That's a new concept. You see, so we're blending concepts causes a new idea, and that's called creativity. So Apple has got it made. They're very creative. They know how to combine. Apple knows how to combine ideas to make something new and creative and innovative. So think about how you can combine different ideas, maybe 2 different storylines, but don't be confusing, but you can combine ideas to be creative. The next step in creativity is communication effectively. If you want your book to be an audiobook, that's one way you can communicate. If you want your book to become a course, that's another way you can communicate. And if you want your book to be a workshop, that's another way to communicate. Or your book can be a speech. That's another way to communicate. There are different ways that you can communicate your ideas. And from one book, you can create so many different options, from workshops, speeches, courses, podcasts, blogs. There's so many things you can do with your book if you think about it. So that's another way to be creative. The next step in creativity is problem solving. If you want to be creative, think of the problems that the world has and how you can solve them, and then use them in your book. One of the ways I wanted to solve a problem was to give people reminders of God's love through poetry. So I mixed God's love and the ideas about God's love and scriptures with poetry, because I wanted to solve that problem of not reading the Bible, but having poetry to read that reminds them of God. So that's another way to do it. problem solving. The next idea is idea generation. Idea generation is to look around you. Look around at your surroundings. What are some ways you can become inspired by the world around you? Some people get that by going to a coffee shop, watching people, listening to conversations, going into forums and community boards and listening to what people are talking about. When you listen to what people talk about, it kind of spurs and sparks inspiration. I find that conversations in Facebook groups to be very inspiring because you find out what people are talking about, what they care about, what they don't like, what they do like, what matters to them. And when you know what matters to people, you can become inspired to write for that purpose. So I encourage you, if you want to be more creative, go into other areas to be inspired and get your muse. Problem solve, communicate effectively, concept blend, and have an incubation period. Let things marinate and get sweeter and sweeter over time. So that's all for now. That's it. And I will talk to you on another video.